in several states to close. You've got a lot of snow in various parts of the country. National Guard has been activated in certain states to help stranded
For
motorists.
ice.
It is a mess.
The ice. And so let me just tell you what, I was texting Ray Pritchard last night, our colleague, who will be on with us tomorrow, if he survives. He lives in Kansas City, as everybody knows who listens to this show. And he sent me a picture of a measuring stick, a ruler, that's what I call them. What do you call them? Yardstick, where it showed like 15 inches where he lives of snow/sleet. He said it's a snow drift. Oh, okay, this was a snow drift outside our door, so maybe it wasn't exactly 15 inches, but enough to get a snow drift of that amount. And he said 8 hours of sleet followed by 10 hours of snow.
Ooh.
He said the storm is worse than anything we saw in Chicago, and he lived in Chicago for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily because of the sleet and ice underneath the snow. Chicago gets a ton of snow, but not much ice, relatively speaking. And then he said, I said, wow, been a few days before you'll be able to drive at all, I suppose. This is me talking to him. Do you have power? And he said, yeah, I do have power. He said, roads are terrible. Dropping below zero in Kansas City tonight. That would have been last night. Power is on so far, but we're in a blizzard warning with ice on trees and power lines. And he said a good time to watch TV and drink hot chocolate. To which Brother Tim responded, do you have, I buttonholed him right here. This next text to him.
Yes.
I just said, do you have a generator? Because maybe I shouldn't have asked him like that, but he said, no. Wish I did. He said, never felt I needed one until this storm. So then I said to him, I changed the subject because I didn't want to say, you're a fool. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, man.
I didn't want to say that to Brother Ray.
Well, yeah.
Huh?
No.
I didn't want to say that. Well, that doesn't help anything. I just left it at, okay, I said, do you have a generator? He said, no. That's all that needs to be said. Don't you think, Ed? Leave it there.
Yeah. Do you have a generator?
Do I?
Yeah.
Allison bought one.
She...
My wife, she bought one. She knows how to work it, too. She showed me the other day how to work it.
I don't have a generator, and it's one of those things where all the preppers, all the guys, who do take those extra steps. We don't have a garage to put it in, but anyway.
Yeah, well, we have a solar operated. Solar operated. It's a new fangled machine there, but hopefully when you get a generator, you just hope you never have to use it, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But this is Fred. You experienced
those kinds of winters.
Those kinds of winters. Ed did too, growing up in New England. Mm-hmm. You guys have definitely experienced and it's. I
remember one where my dad came close to dying. It was something connected with our Christmas. My dad's whole side of the family were up in New Hampshire from Massachusetts. We're having a good time, dinner at, noon or whatever. And around 6 o'clock, someone looks outside and it said, did you all know it was snowing? And it was 18 inches of snow in a massive storm. And all my relatives.
We're talking 70s here?
We're talking, probably
1970s?
In 74, 75, something like that. So all my relatives get into their cars and get out. And my dad told my uncle, he said, I'll follow you out to the highway. Make sure you get out to the highway because I think they had started plowing. Well, my uncle got out on the highway. My dad tried to come, and he got stuck. And
Your dad got stuck?
He got stuck. So he decided to walk home. It was 4 miles.
Oh, my.
In the snow. And he said, I didn't think I was going to make it.
I guess not.
It was very cold. And if you've ever tried to walk in heavy, high snow, you get exhausted pretty quick.
Yeah.
So
very much so.
It was probably 6 degrees or something.
I've got one winter storm
story.
But I'll tell. Not that anybody cares. I'll tell a Southern boy winter storm. I'll try to make it sound as dramatic as I can. Okay. So it was our family went to. This would have been in the 90s, right, Tim? Or yeah, I think it was 90s. Anyway, we went to a college bowl game in Shreveport. Mississippi State was playing Texas A&M. It became known as the infamous or famous Snow Bowl game. And so you got all these Southerners convened in Shreveport, and Shreveport doesn't know, they don't know how to handle snow
No.
either. So, but the thing of it is, we're at the ball game, and it starts snowing heavily. And it was predicted, but it starts snowing heavily. I'm talking about coming down, where you're almost blinded.
Yeah.
And so we're in the stadium, and my wife Allison, she decides to take, I think, two. We had 3 children. 2 of them, I think, she decided to take to the car because it was just they were young.
Yeah.
And so she started going out to the car from the stadium. Well, by the time she got out into the parking lot to get, which would have been about a 10-minute walk to get to our car, she couldn't find our car.
You know, all the cars covered with snow. You
Bingo.
can't tell. Yeah.
All the cars. Now, she wasn't in a life-threatening situation. You could see the stadium. You could get back to the stadium. But still, it was a scary thing to be holding the hands of 2 small children out in a parking lot going, I don't know where the car is. You know?
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cars.
Yes. Could not being unfamiliar with the stadium or the parking lot.
Right.
You know, now I think finally she was able to get close enough to where she knew if I click on it'll blink.
Yeah.
You know, and so she was able to find the car after about 10 minutes of just wandering around, going, what should I do here? But anyway, I'm just saying that. And you know, Fred, you have, I'm sure, a lot of stories about how things can deteriorate very quickly.
Oh, absolutely. When I was growing up, it was not uncommon, a big snowstorm. You would have 8-9 foot high drifts around the house. We have gone 2-3 days without being able to move because even the major highways were not plowed out where we lived. I mean,
Would you live out in a rural area or?
Yes,
Yeah.
outside of town.
Nova Scotia.
So those kinds of winters, thankfully, those kind of winters are very rare now. They still get snow, but it isn't as bad as it used to be.
I'm just so thankful for global warming.
Yeah.
I really am.
Bring it on.
Bring it on.
Yeah,
More
bring it
global
on.
warming, the better.
Listen, we used to have we'd have 2 and 3 foot long icicles. The house I grew up in was a 2-story garrison, and those icicles off the top of the house were. My dad and mom always saying, "Don't play around the base of the. If they drop, if one of those breaks and drops,
Oh, yeah.
you're a goner."
Yeah. All right. So we are, that's affecting probably 2/3 of the country. I'm talking about the winter storms. Winter storm.
By the way, for the story that Chris was mentioning, American Family News, folks, check out AFN.net. AFN.net. Lots of great stories written by our staff. We also have articles written by Associated Press, videos from Associated Press. So it is a great one-stop place for news from a Christian perspective. So AFN.net.
All right, Fred, there's a big news out of Canada. On the international scene, this is probably the number 1 story today.
It's breaking news right now. The Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, has stepped down. We kind of expected this since early this morning. Because it's Canadian politics, am I allowed to respond editorially?
Go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord.
Fred is glad to see this announcement, right?
Oh, absolutely. I was no fan of his dad when his dad was Prime Minister from, I think 68 to 84, something like that.
Pierre Trudeau.
Yeah, Pierre Trudeau. Justin Trudeau was head of the capital L Liberal Party. There are 4 big parties in Canada: capital L Liberal, capital C Conservative, the Parti Québécois, and the New Democratic Party. The Liberal Party back in 2013 was in the political wilderness. They needed a fresh new face that would attract a lot of attention. So that's when Justin Trudeau came on the scene. I think he was a school teacher or something like that. Brought him back. He was elected prime minister in 2015. But if you think that Joe Biden and the Democrats have been very liberal, Trudeau is up on them as far as left-wing politics goes. Just absolutely horrible what has happened in Canada. You may remember during COVID, the truckers' dispute, remember that in Ottawa? He decided he was going to end that. He froze their bank accounts, their personal bank accounts, the whole thing. That's only part of it. Very anti-petroleum, and if you know Canadian politics and Canadian economy at all, Canada is rich.
Oh, yeah.
Rich in fossil fuels. Well, he's a big climate change guy. So one of the things he did was put on a carbon tax on basically everything that Canadians buy. On top of that, here's similarities with Joe Biden. He opened the floodgates on immigration. Just people pouring in from all over the world. So very, very unpopular. Violence in the streets in Canada. You normally think of Canada as being very quiet, but violence in the streets, him doing nothing about it. Anti-Semitism in the last year has gone, and he was basically a cold shoulder to all of that. He has been an absolutely terrible, terrible leader. Canadians can hardly wait till the next election, which is this October, and they have to have an election by this October. Things really started to unravel for Justin Trudeau just in the last several weeks, in particular, because of a huge revolt inside his own party.
Against him?
Against him. His finance minister / deputy prime minister turned against him. She wanted to go one fiscal route. He totally was opposite to that. She quit. And that was the straw. By the way, they were supposed to hold an emergency cabinet meeting of his cabinet this Wednesday. That's when the speculation began that they were all going to vote and say, we don't want you to be leader anymore. And so the speculation was that he was going to quit this morning. That's exactly what he has done.
So, Fred, tell us a little bit about now what comes next. He steps down as Liberal leader, but he's also the head of the government in Canada, right?
Yes.
So what happens? You said they have to have an election by October, but you can't go without a prime minister till October, right?
What will happen? They'll pick a new leader. The Liberals will pick a new leader within their own party. What may happen now, though, is moving up the election. They don't have to wait till October.
Oh, I see.
They can have an election. Basically, you can have a non-confidence vote in Canada, and that precipitates an immediate election. So we could have that. So this is all just happening as we're talking here. So we'll have to wait and see what happens.
And we do have some audio of Mr. Trudeau, courtesy of our Rusty Pugh here. I don't know what number it is. Go for it.
This morning, I advised the Governor-General that we need a new session of Parliament. She has granted this request, and the House will now be prorogued until March 24th. Over the holidays, I've also had a chance to reflect and have had long talks with my family about our future. So last night over dinner, I told my kids about the decision that I'm sharing with you today. I intend to resign as party leader, as prime minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process.
Well, I hear that Joe Biden might be available. I mean,
He did say he was looking for a job.
Well,
That's a bad idea, Ed. Right there, I got to tell you, brother, as one friend to another.
Yes.
I don't think Canada wants Joe Biden.
well, I don't know. From what Fred's saying, it might push
An improvement.
Canada into a more conservative posture.
yeah, I think what Canadians are hoping for right now, according to all the polls, the leader of the capital C Conservative Party is a guy by the name of Pierre Poilievre. He's a guy born in Calgary, represents a parliamentary district in the Ottawa area. He is very conservative financially, fiscally. I would say, though, when it comes to social issues like abortion and gay marriage, he is okay with those.
Yeah.
So, but as far as fiscally goes, he is very conservative. He's also very pro-Israel. And has spoken out about the anti-Semitism on campuses there, et cetera, et cetera. So, what
about? I guess for an American's perspective on Canadian politics would be the trade
Yes.
the trade that goes on between the United States and Canada. How friendly will this new? Well, we don't know who it's going to be yet.
Yes.
Will the new party in power be?
Well, regardless of the party in power, Canada depends greatly on all the things that Americans buy from Canada.
Yeah, sure.
Canada is the biggest trading partner.
Yeah.
And so that nobody is going to jeopardize that trade relationship.
Yeah.
We heard what Donald Trump has said about
Right.
tariffs,
Right,
et cetera,
right.
et cetera. And I think what you're going to see is a renewed appreciation both sides of the border.
I wonder if Trudeau, though, doesn't want to deal with Trump anymore.
I don't think that's what drove him from office.
Okay.
No.
Okay, because they don't see eye to eye on a whole lot. It doesn't sound like to me.
No.
But with respect to Trudeau, also, I've announced to my family I'm going to resign. He didn't. I would have filled in the blank for him, and that is because my poll numbers are horrible.
Oh, yes.
Because he has a high disapproval rating.
Oh,
I mean, he's not going to survive. He knows he
No.
can't win.
That's right.
So it's better for him to resign.
Yep.
Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, set to resign immediately.
Well,
Or when they choose a new.
what they've done this morning, he went to the
Yeah.
Governor General last night to prorogue the current setting of Parliament until March. That gives them time to pick a new leader, et cetera.
Where's the capital? Is that
Ottawa.
Ottawa?
Yeah.
But Ottawa's not a province.
No.
Ottawa's a city inside of
Ontario.
Ontario. Yeah. Okay. Well, you got Toronto,
The big
largest.
city.
Toronto's the largest city in Canada, and
Right.
it's in Ottawa.
In Ontario.
Excuse me, Ontario. Okay.
Yeah.
I know you got. Am I digging myself a bigger hole here
I think so.
with Canadian geography? Well, I do know you got Montreal,
Uh-huh.
you got Toronto, you got Vancouver,
Correct.
and those are probably the largest cities in
Yeah,
Ottawa.
it would go Toronto being the largest.
Right.
Vancouver, I think, now has taken over second, and then Montreal the third.
Yeah.
It's 10 degrees today in Ottawa, Fahrenheit. Negative 12 Celsius for the Canadians in the room.
Not a bad day in Ottawa this time of the
That's warm.
year.
All right. Thank you, Fred.
You are welcome.
Appreciate it. Fred Jackson joining us for a few minutes here to talk about what's happening in his home country with a big change at the top as Justin Trudeau has announced he is
His
resigning.
country of origin.
Yes.
He's at
yes.
home now here in the United States.
Yes, yes. All right, you're listening to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. What's your next story, Chris?
Well, let's keep it in politics for just a minute. I've got one more. It's a 30-second clip here. But a lot of people are still upset about the outcome of the November election. Democrats say Republicans made a poor decision in siding with Donald Trump over Kamala Harris. But one of the voters out there saying Democrats lost because they have absurd policies is athlete turned activist Riley Gaines. Here's a bit of what she had to say today on Fox and Friends Clip 6.
We have reached a point in time where we have an entire party, at least in terms of elected representation, who is willing to say that men can become women, that men can get pregnant, that men can breastfeed, that men can be lesbians, referring to Latino individuals as Latinx. Again, it just shows you how far from reality the Democratic Party is and how they've lost the ability to communicate with common sense, everyday Americans who intuitively know that men and women are different.
Yeah, I would say that this is a real thing in terms of the Democratic Party having problems with exactly what Riley Gaines is talking about. Because when you hear people like we've mentioned Bill Maher on this show before, he has a talk show. I think it's on HBO. I'm not sure, but most people will see clips of Bill Maher on social media from his show. He's been hammering the nutcases within the Democratic Party. A lot of he's a comedian as well. A lot of comedians doing the same thing. I think that the Democratic Party has a real problem with that wing of the party that wants to continue promoting absurdity And Tim, I'm not sure they can get rid of them. I mean, I think those people are here to stay within the Democratic Party. And if you try to move towards the middle of what most people think in terms of who's a man and who's a woman, they're going to tear their party apart.
Well, let me just say, too, Riley Gaines has just been an outstanding spokesperson for common sense and for advocating for women in sports and in other this whole transgendered movement. She's been a excellent spokesperson for our side,
Yes.
so to speak. And so at first when she came out to, oppose boys and girls sports because it affected her personally. You remember that?
Yeah.
She had to swim against the guy who called himself
Leah
He was
Thomas.
born Will.
Yeah, he was Will, and then he said, "You know what? I can't beat guys, but I can beat girls.
Yes.
So sign me up as Leah,
Yeah.
and I'll race against them." And remember that?
Yep.
And so Riley Gaines at the University of Kentucky, she was an All-American swimmer, and she had to end up facing the dude, and that's when this all became a big story about 3 years ago. And then she came out and she is more than just a one voice, one time opposition. She has been a national spokesperson.
And she basically committed her life to this.
Yes, she
because
has.
She's not going to, I don't know what she studied in college, but she's not going to get a job at a major corporation after having taken this stand.
Right.
She's in this fight
Yeah.
for keeps.
She just does an excellent job. We're going to have her back on to talk about where all this goes now that Trump has been elected and the Republicans are coming into power. Because Trump the other day, President Trump said there's only two genders, male and female.
Yeah.
Basically, he said my administration is not going to. We're not messing around with this woke stuff anymore.
Yeah.
There's male and female, boys and girls, and that's what we're gonna protect.
Amen.
Amen.
Preach it.
So anyway, we'll be back momentarily with more of today's issues on the American Family Radio Network.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
Let me tell you the story of two men by the name of John Anybody and Jim Somebody. Now, John Anybody lived to a ripe old age and died. He went to heaven and applied as a candidate for residency in that place. St. Peter was questioning John Anybody about himself. In the course of the conversation, Mr. Anybody asked St. Peter what kind of people lived in heaven. Well, what kind of people lived in the town where you lived on earth? St. Peter asked Mr. Anybody, turning the question back to him. Oh, the town I lived in wasn't a good town to live in at all. The people weren't friendly. They were stingy. They weren't good neighbors. I just didn't like living in that town at all. That's the reason I ask you what kind of people live up here. If it is the same kind of people, I would just as soon go to the other place, Mr. Anybody replied. Well, I hate to tell you this, said St. Peter, but the same kind of people live up here as lived in your town on earth. If that's the case, replied Mr. Anybody, you can count me out. I want no part of a place like the place I lived in on earth. And with that, Mr. Anybody turned and walked away. As he was leaving, he happened to meet Mr. Jim Somebody, who was on his way to talk to St. Peter about living in heaven. Not any need of going in there, Mr. Anybody told Mr. Somebody. People in there are just like they were on earth. They aren't worth living with. Mr. Somebody thanked him for the advice, but stated that he wanted to check it out for himself. When Mr. Somebody got to the gate, he began talking with St. Peter. What kind of people live up here? Mr. Somebody asked St. Peter. The fellow I passed on the road said they weren't fit to live with. Again, St. Peter did not answer his question directly, but with another question. What kind of people lived in the town where you lived on earth? St. Peter asked Mr. Somebody. Oh, they were fine people. They were friendly. They were generous and helpful, real good neighbors. I really enjoyed living in the town where I lived on earth, Mr. Somebody said in reply to St. Peter's question. Well, said St. Peter, the same kind of people live up here. Excellent, claimed Mr. Somebody. How about opening the gates and letting me in? And St. Peter did open the gates, and Mr. Somebody promptly entered heaven. Well, that's the story of Mr. John Anybody and Mr. Jim Somebody. Both of them asked St. Peter the same question, and St. Peter asked both of them the same question. But St. Peter received two completely different answers from the two men. Mr. Somebody went to heaven, and Mr. Anybody went to, well, Mr. Anybody just didn't go to heaven, but it was of his own free choice that he did not go to heaven. I nearly forgot to tell you, Mr. Anybody and Mr. Somebody lived in the same town, anywhere, Earth.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
But he saves the poor from the sword of their mouth and from the hand of the strong. So the helpless has hope, and injustice has shut its mouth.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
Welcome back, everybody, to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim, Ed, and Chris. Respectfully, we asked Fred to leave the studio because Canada, quite frankly, is responsible for this weather we're experiencing here in the United States, and somebody has to take responsibility for
Somebody
it.
will take the fall.
Fred, hailing from Canada, we said, see ya.
Yeah.
So
Just for this show, though.
just for this show, for today, somebody needs to be held accountable, and Fred's a Canadian. No, Fred's voice has been failing him somewhat, and so maybe he'll be back maybe tomorrow.
We
or the next day.
really use Fred a lot.
Yes, he filled in for Todd Herman. He fills in for Jenna Ellis during the
We
holidays.
started new shows just for Fred to fill in on
Yeah.
last week.
Hey, listen, I wanted to read an email from a listener, which I think is going to be, which is very encouraging. I haven't even read this to you guys. I was going to read it to our staff this morning at devotion, but guess what? I forgot.
You forgot.
So hope I'll read it next Monday. But here's what it says. This came in, December the 18th. Came in through our email service. Hello. I just wanted to let everyone who's a part of AFR know that you were all such a blessing at the darkest moment of my life. I had a drug addiction for many years, and I ended up doing 4.5 years on a 30-year sentence. Once I got to the Estill unit in Huntsville, Texas, I heard about AFR. That's all I listened when I was in my cell for the rest of the time I was there. It really gave me peace and helped me rebuild my relationship with God. I have now been out for 1.5 years and clean and sober for 6 years and 3 months. God has restored my relationships with my family and kids. I am blessed beyond belief. I wanted to make sure you all know how much AFR meant to me. I'm going to download the app so that I can start tuning in again. I wish you all the best. Thank you, and God bless. Sincerely. Then I won't give the person's name, obviously, because they didn't give me permission to do so. But this was a listener in Texas, who wrote us this email.
And you did send that around to leadership last week, and several of us commented that and folks, for you who are listening, whose lives are relatively calm and tranquil, and you have a sense of
all three of
being blessed. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of tranquility out there, but just remember, as this listener writes, you never have any idea sometimes what people are going through, And we want to thank our donors and supporters
Yeah.
for keeping American Family Radio on the air, because the gospel is reaching people.
Amen.
And helping them, the Lord using AFR as an instrument of His mercy and grace.
Amen. We have had a lot of people write us over. We get an email or a physical letter probably every 2 weeks from a listener who's incarcerated.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we may be their only lifeline to the outside world, so to speak,
Right.
at least from a Christian perspective. And so we're, that's the thing about radio. It can penetrate prisons and hospitals and nursing homes and all kinds of places maybe that. So we're just thankful to the Lord for that, and glad that we could be a part of helping this fella get his life turned around.
Yeah.
Obviously, God turned his life around.
Yes.
But He used American Family Radio to get the word of God out to help this fella. All right, you're listening to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. What's your next story, Chris?
Well, Congress is ready today to certify President-elect Donald Trump's election win in November, but some Democrats and their allies at Associated Press and other news outlets are using this opportunity to once again blame Donald Trump for what happened on January 6th back in 2021, I should say.
I hadn't heard a thing about this. What are you talking about, Chris?
Yeah, January 6th is a day that some Democrats have put on the same level as 9/11 or Pearl Harbor, based on the people that they say
what that
stormed
is?
the Capitol.
I used to call that hyperbole.
Yeah.
For years, I called that hyperbole, and then Ed corrected me numerous times and told me the word is hyperbole.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's because you're so into college football, you immediately went for hyperbole.
Oh,
It sounds like a bowl game.
that's right.
The Chick-fil-A
So-
Hyperbole.
So the word is hyperbole, and that's what the some Democrats and some news media are participating in. Everybody's processed January 6th. It was a bad day for our country.
Mm.
People should not have broken into the Capitol, stormed the Capitol. That should not have happened. It wasn't as bad as the Democrats and the liberal media tried to make it out to be.
Mhm.
And then they tried to milk that thing for 2 years with that January 6th committee. And I think a lot of people saw through that. So we see what you're doing here. Yeah, yes, it was bad, but it wasn't 9/11 bad. It wasn't Pearl Harbor bad. So quit telling me it is.
Mm. Well, to your point here, this is the Associated Press headline for today. Congress is ready to certify Trump's election win, but his January 6th legacy hangs over the day. That's the headline. So from the headline where the story
Yeah,
is.
whatever. You have your little day, media.
Yeah. Now, I will say the head of the Democratic Party, the Democratic National Chair, I should
Who is
say,
that, Chris?
Jamie Harrison.
Jamie still there?
He's still there. Jamie said, and I quote, 4 years ago, the world watched as Donald Trump directed a violent mob that stormed our Capitol,
Maybe you've
attacking
heard
law
about it.
enforcement and threatening our democratic institutions. The peaceful transition of power is a hallmark of our democracy, especially when elections do not turn in our favor. Democrats remain steadfast in our support of the democratic values our country was founded on and will always work to ensure
Is this
that
how
our
you talk,
democratic
Chris?
process,
Practicing?
in my mind, and institutions continue to function in services of the American people, whether we win or lose.
End of quote.
Yes.
Detect a little bit of cynicism in Chris's voice.
No, that's 22 years in broadcasting and knowing what is
Trying
really
to come
at the
up
heart
with
of
the
a politician.
voice of Jamie. Anyway, all right, they'll have their. I know I'm seeing it on the news. They're showing the replays like we haven't seen them 1,000 times of the what happened on.
And by the way,
January
there were a lot of people who wound up in the Capitol that day who were let in peacefully. I mean, by Capitol Police. There were those, though, that smashed and, grabbed and whatever. So anyway, like you said, this January 6th, I'll be glad when January 7th gets around.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, all of today's events come just a few days after Mike Johnson was put back into the speakership.
Wait, but before we leave this January 6th story, President Trump is going to pardon those folks, right?
He has said he will. We're assuming he is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
he
mean,
can't. He
day
can't
one.
until he's officially the president. But I've heard numbers of around 1,000 could be.
Yeah.
Their sentences commuted. You know, we talked about in a meeting this morning. There were some bad apples in that group. We don't want to give the impression that everybody brought picnic baskets into the Capitol, and so he can't pardon or commute sentences for all those people. But 1,000 is.
How do you decide who to and who not to?
He's going to have staff recommendations.
I mean, Joe Biden just pardoned and commuted a whole bunch of people he didn't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. If I'm Trump, I just pardon them all and be done with it.
Well, it could be.
I don't think there's any fallout, any negative fallout for doing that.
It's not like it's going to.
The reason I say that, even if they did something, they didn't kill anybody. Those people didn't kill anybody. Do you aware that they claim the police officer, Capitol police officer, who died of
it was a heart attack.
Or something the next day. That was not a proven direct death of
right.
The events.
Nobody
of that day.
hit him over the head.
Right now, who knows? Maybe the stress of that day caused him to have a heart attack. I don't know, but there wasn't any direct correlation proven on that day. So my point is that these folks, even if they committed a crime, have after whatever it is, 4 years, have certainly served their sentence.
I see what you're saying.
That's my point.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right, you're listening to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. What were you saying about Mike Johnson?
Yeah, today's certification comes just a few days after
Mike Johnson certified?
Well, today's certification of the election comes a few days after Mike Johnson was put back into the speakership. For those that were focused on some other stuff on Friday, they had like 1.5 votes. They had a vote, and it looked like Johnson didn't have the necessary votes to become speaker again. There were a few Republicans that voted for other Republicans that were not running to be speaker, by the way. But then they took a break, and according to reports on Friday afternoon, Johnson entered into a meeting in which President-elect Trump was on the phone, and the Republicans that voted for other were basically brought to change their votes. And so a couple of them decided to go ahead and change their mind and put Johnson back up there. Some people wanted Tom Emmer. Some people wanted Byron Donaldson. Somebody voted for Jim Jordan. And those were not those representatives themselves. Those people actually voted for Johnson to be Speaker of the House. So it looked like it was going to be kind of hanging over our head, and we may not even have a speaker on the day when we're trying to certify the election. But as of right now, Speaker Johnson's back in there, and it looks like we're moving on.
Well, and in terms of being cooperative with President-elect Trump, unless you're someone like in the Senate, someone like Susan Collins or Lisa Murkowski of senators from Maine and Alaska, respectively, unless you're in a state like that or in a tamper-proof political office, you're going to have to cooperate with President Trump, at least initially. I don't think you can be a Republican, again, except for those that are insulated completely. You really can't be seen as trying to stop what Donald Trump wants to do. You got to at least give him a chance.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and Trump is supportive of Mike Johnson being Speaker of the House, and so that helped Mike Johnson the other day get over the top with enough votes that he needed to be Speaker of the House. Of course, Mike Johnson from Louisiana has been Speaker of the House now for 6 months?
A year or so. It took like 15 votes before they got rid of Kevin McCarthy, and that was brought by Matt Gaetz.
That was a circus
it
there.
was.
Remember that, huh? What happened there? But Mike Johnson was ultimately chosen as I remember I was on a phone call with several conservative leaders. This is a year ago or so. And they were talking about, what was happening with Kevin McCarthy. That was going on at the time. And Mike Johnson was one of the people on the phone, on this phone conference that I was on. And somebody talked about him. Well, Mike, would you be considered being a candidate for this position? I think he said, well, I would be honored, but I think he said something to the effect, I don't think I'll be chosen by my colleagues. Well, lo and behold, like within a week or two later, here he is. His name comes up, and he becomes he goes from being a relatively unknown congressman from Louisiana to being Speaker of the House. And here he is today, having survived, having survived. Listen, I'm hesitant to talk about stuff that I don't know a lot about, but doesn't usually stop us, does it?
I think you go for it.
I think
It's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is to get permission.
I'll just say this without, at the risk of angering some people who are listening to us right now. Being Speaker of the House for the Republican Party is a no-win job because you're going to be caught. You're forever going to be caught between shutting the government down and working out a deal with the devil, that being the Democrats usually, to keep government going. And the government going is spending government money beyond its means. But you can't stop it. This is where I'm going to get into this is where people are going to say, oh, yeah, you can. Okay, I'm going to say, yeah, you can, but the pain and the angst that comes with shutting the government down for an extended period of time is not something that is popular enough with the American people to do. And no president coming into office like Trump, for example, wants to be in a fight with the opposing party over shutting the government down, over spending. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because politically you can be, if you shut the government down, politically in the media, you can be made to look like the devil, because they'll say, "Oh, you want to cut off Social Security?
Yes.
Oh, our military, you want to cut while our members of our military are overseas protecting our country. You want to stop their families from," and that's never what shutting down the government actually means. But that's what everyone thinks it means.
But people who are sincere about this issue of government spending and how it's wildly out of control and it's ultimately going to be cause a major recession or whatever, which they're right about that, but there's no appetite from a majority of Americans to do something about that.
Right.
And
you know what part of the reason for that is because both political parties, Democrats mostly, but the Republicans have joined them in spending. Everybody's got a taste for the federal money that comes their way. I'm talking about voters.
Yeah.
Whose golden calf is going to be the one that gets axed?
Right.
And that's why nobody has a taste for it.
Yeah. So you say, well, where does this road end up that we're on? This spend beyond our means. Forever and ever, amen. And that would be, to a place called I don't know city, huh?
Right.
Because I thought we would be suffering now for our debt, our debt, but some would say, well, we are, but we're not in any kind of a 1929 Great Depression type situation. I mean, We're not anywhere near that. So I don't know. People would say, well, if we keep spending beyond our means, it's ultimately going to mean we go into hyperinflation or a recession,
maybe a depression,
a Great Depression or something like that. Well, a lot of people who the answer to that would be, oh, really? Well, you've been saying that for 20 years now, and that hasn't happened. Have we had ups and downs in our economy? Yeah, but I'm talking about cataclysmic dive off the, you know what I'm saying? Off the deep end of an economy. where where we can't pay our debts anymore.
Our national debt, I'm looking at the U.S. debt clock,
Yeah.
$36 trillion.
Yeah, you know what? Yawn.
Yeah. I mean,
because you know what? I'm not saying that doesn't matter. I'm just saying people don't care about that anymore. Remember looking at that 20 years ago when it was like $9 trillion and you going, wow, this is the end of America as we know it.
Well, and I think you one time said, who knows? I mean, can we go to 20 trillion, 25, 30 trillion? And I thought at the time, how could we ever get to 30 trillion? Well, it's 36.
Yeah.
Heading towards 40.
Yeah, and what you're coming up against, and here's where I get into. I'm about to get so off the road that I don't know what I'm talking about.
You have to throw it into
I
four-wheel
do know
drive?
this. Yes, I do know this much. That you have to the federal government has to pay interest on money that it borrows.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right about that?
Yes.
Correct. Okay. So we're not too far away, whatever that means exactly. I'm not sure. I can't describe it to you, but from we're listening to economists, we're not too far away from reaching the point where it takes all the income from tax dollars, federal tax dollars, to pay the interest on the 36 trillion or whatever it is that we're in debt to quote service the debt. And that is the point where I think nobody knows. I mentioned the road to unknown city, we don't know city. I don't think anybody knows what happens at that point.
Well, I'm looking at the U.S. debt clock. That's U.S. debt.
But we don't encourage you to look at this.
.org. No, unless you've had a really good weekend.
Right.
You don't want to look at
No,
this.
you don't. January 6th, you start looking at the debt clock.
All right, so
You barely got off the ground here.
So this, for Tim and I, we're just going to mention these numbers. We don't know what they mean, folks.
Right.
We have a general sense. The U.S. federal debt to GDP ratio. So that's the gross domestic product, and the ratio of debt to the GDP. In 1980, the debt was 34%. Okay.
Okay.
I
understand that.
Okay. Now it's 123% to our
Wow.
gross domestic product.
Okay.
So
here's the one thing that makes this usually numbers, as they say, numbers don't lie, and you have to you understand the effects of going broke, right?
Yeah.
You have to bankruptcy or whatever like that. In the case of the United States federal government, not the same rules don't apply as applies to our kitchen table.
Right.
Here's what I mean. When the United States federal government needs money, it just borrows more and prints more. Well, I can't print more in my home. You can't either without being busted by the Secret Service.
That's right.
And put in jail for a long time. We
Yeah.
can't do that. We can't print money. Okay. Well, also the dollar, the U.S. dollar, serves as what's called the world reserve currency. Okay, which means every other currency in the world is measured against the dollar, which gives the dollar a huge advantage globally in trading, in borrowing, and all this. I mean, so if that ever ceases to be the case, which I don't see it happening in the foreseeable future because there's not any other currency around the world that outperforms the dollar. Everybody else is in trouble too from a debt perspective. China's in enormous.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So so I'm just saying, this goes back to our original point. When the Republicans who do argue for fiscal sanity, that is, you only spend more than you take in, they are voices crying in the wilderness, and a majority of Republican voters in America, I think, either A, don't care about that issue anymore because we've been told it's going to have it's the little boy that cried wolf syndrome. They don't care anymore, or they just say there's nothing I can do about it, and there's nothing anybody can do about it because our way of life in this country just depends on the dollars that the federal government borrows and spends. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So, but who knows? Who knows what'll happen?
So happy Monday.
Yeah.
Happy Monday to you, our listeners.
So
It's January 6th.
So when the people that are putting the most pressure on Mike Johnson to get out of there are the people who want a balanced budget.
Yeah.
And Mike Johnson would say, I do too, but we can't do that right now.
You can't, and
Trump doesn't care about this at all either. I mean, I love
Yeah.
Trump for many different reasons. I love what he stands for many different reasons, but he doesn't give a rip about balancing the budget either.
Right.
These
aren't the days of Ronald Reagan.
No.
Or even Bill Clinton.
No,
Clinton had a
the only
balanced
extent that Trump would care about this is how it affects the economy under his leadership.
Yeah.
Then he would care about this, but it's too painful for any Republican or Democrat president to deal with in a straightforward, serious manner. That's my opinion. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that even when Republicans have suggested or put forth a budget plan that says we want to just slow the increase in our spending, Democrats and the media turn around and say, "You're cutting."
Yeah,
you're cutting.
You're cutting. You want to cut Social Security
Yes.
for Grandma, don't you?
Schools.
So that's how hard it is to get to a balanced budget. You're not even allowed to slow down the increases that have been built in without getting accused of granting off a cliff.
I want to apologize. You haven't been able to talk for 15 minutes.
It was good listening, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
But when Ed and I get started with our knowledge of the economy and government spending and everything,
it's deep.
Yeah.
It's natural. We take over.
I will make some calls today to talk to people about what we can expect if they don't fix it, and I'll have those at my disposal next time.
And find out if we're not right.
Okay.
Because I think you're going to find out that what Ed and I just shared for 15
As my
minutes
boss, you are right in whatever you say, sir.
We just bingoed. All right, we'll be back in 5 minutes with more of today's issue.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
You're aware of how important it is to stay engaged in America's culture war. One way American Family Association helps you to do that is through action alerts. Here's how it works. Once or twice a week, we'll email you about matters critical to America's families, and we'll offer ways to take action. Visit afa.net today and tap the Action Alert sign-up button.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, almost TV. As expected, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has resigned.
This morning, I advised the Governor General that we need a new session of Parliament. She has granted this request, and the House will now be prorogued until March 24th. Over the holidays, I've also had a chance to reflect and have had long talks with my family about our future. I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process.
Trudeau came to power in 2015 after 10 years of Conservative Party rule in Canada. He will remain the Prime Minister until a new leader is chosen for the Liberal Party. A major winter storm is sweeping the country, and millions of Americans are facing hazardous snow and ice. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear giving an update on conditions in his state.
We've had between 6 and 8 inches of snow, followed by really at least a half an inch of ice across most of Kentucky, more than was originally expected.
The storm expected to continue moving towards the East Coast, bringing snowfall rates of 1 to 2 inches per hour in some areas. President Joe Biden will ban new offshore oil and gas development along most U.S. coastlines, a decision that President-elect Donald Trump, who has vowed to boost domestic energy production, may find difficult to reverse. Incoming White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says Biden's ban on offshore drilling is just a last-minute, desperate attempt to slow down Trump's agenda.
That's exactly right. This is a disgraceful decision by the Biden administration. And I say the administration because we all know Joe Biden doesn't know what's going on. This isn't him. This is the radical left environmental extremists in his administration who don't care about what's in the best interest of the American people who just reelected President Trump with a resounding mandate to drill, baby, drill. This decision, the intent behind it is to exact political revenge on the American people and on President Trump.
Senator Chuck Schumer said Sunday that they didn't mislead Americans about President Biden's decline or ability to serve. NBC News' Kristen Welker confronted the senator, who refused to answer.
I want to play you a little bit of something you said last year. Take a look.
I talk to President Biden, regularly, sometimes several times in a week, or usually several times in a week. His mental acuity is great. It's fine. It's as good as it's been over the years. All this right-wing propaganda that his mental acuity has declined is wrong.
Leader Schumer, what do you say to Americans who feel as though you and other top Democrats misled them about President Biden's mental acuity?
Well, look, we didn't. And let's look at President Biden. He's had an amazing record. When he stepped down, he did it on his own because he thought it was better not only for the Democratic Party, for America. We should all salute him.
And finally, an Ohio ministry is taking a county to court.
Grace Haven is a Christian ministry that serves and cares for youth victims of sex trafficking across the state of Ohio. It was formed about 10 years ago and has been a haven of safety and comfort for girls in the area who have been victimized by child sex trafficking and abuse. For years, Grace Haven partnered with Montgomery County, Ohio to provide services for these victims, but attorney Ryan Tucker of Alliance Defending Freedom says that changed recently when the county changed contracting terms to include some new non-discrimination language.
Grace Haven pointed out the fact that they hire religious people who believe in religious things, and the state or the county didn't appreciate that and canceled the contract. So that's put in jeopardy the ability of this fine organization to help these young girls who have been victimized by sex trafficking.
A status conference is set for this week. Attorneys will discuss a briefing schedule and potential oral argument for ADF's request for injunctive relief.
So it will be fairly soon when we get a chance to argue on behalf of Grace Haven and the girls that it serves.
I'm Chris Woodward.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
The American Family Association's mission is to inform, equip, and activate individuals to strengthen the moral foundations of our culture. We also support the church. Our goal is to be a leading organization in biblical worldview training for cultural transformation. We believe true morality flows from biblical principles and directs people to the manner in which God intends them to live.
Thank you for standing with the American Family Association as we seek to stop the erosion of godly values.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
Hey, welcome back to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. I'm Tim Wildman with Ed Battagliano, and now Steve Paisley Jordahl joins us. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, everybody. I'm changing out headsets here, so forgive me. It's a good
go
day,
ahead.
but the headset is not working right, so.
Yeah, you change out your headset. We all need to do that sometime in our life. Today's your day, Steve.
To change your
headset of life.
Headset.
Yeah, your mindset, your headset. There's a lot of things.
Yeah.
So, by the way, our sympathies go out to those suffering from the revenge of Old Man Winter, who's been slumbering for 3 or 4 years, right?
Yeah.
And now it's just we were talking about what Ray Pritchard told me was happened in Kansas City, and now that same storm seeing the weather from Indianapolis and across the Mid-Atlantic now. So it's a big deal. It's a big major story. A lot of people are going to be without power.
Yep.
Do what now?
In like a lion, out like a lamb, they say.
Who says that?
That's March.
Isn't
that March?
Winter? I thought that
No,
was winter.
yeah. I think March comes in like a lion, goes out like a lamb.
I think there are a lot of people joining me in. Well, I'm just going to tell you, I'm forming a I'm forming a hate group against cold weather. And you know what I'm saying?
I'm willing to join it. I used to love cold weather.
Right.
Growing up in New England, and up until a couple of years ago, the colder the better. And as I got older,
your bones said,
"Yeah, I'm enough, enough." Now, I'm not going to say that July and August in Mississippi makes me happy,
right?
But I prefer it to the freezing cold weather
all day, every day.
Yeah,
all day, every day.
And I do miss. It never used to bother me the dark in the morning, and then you get off work or school, or whatever. It's dark. That never used to bother me years ago, but the last few years that's bothered me too. I just like sunshine.
Yeah.
And I used to make fun of snowbirds, okay? And by that I mean folks who escaped the cold weather up north and flew south and for winter months to stay warm and then move back. But I now confess that I understand thoroughly what you've
seen the light.
I've seen the light.
You've seen the sunlight.
So I'm going to join your hate.
Only during part of the day, though, you've seen the sunlight.
Yes.
All right, Steve, what do you got?
All right. Well, we continue. You know who's president of the United States right now is Joe Biden. We kind of tend to forget that because he
forgets it.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. You put that on a tee, Steve. I just hit it out of the ballpark.
I know. Well done.
Yeah.
We continually, though, get reminded every so often, and I want to play you a little clip. Now, my understanding is, because I didn't hear the question that was asked, but he was asked about some foreign policy issue. And for some reason, this was his response. Now, we had to edit it because it had a swear word in it that we can't use on our air. Which kind of...
I don't think there are any swear words we can use on their air.
Well, that's true.
But certainly not this one.
That's true. So let's play clip 8.
I think what he did was a genuine threat to democracy. I'm hopeful that we're beyond that. The only thing, my being the oldest president, I know more world leaders than any one of you ever met in your whole life. And I know them, and I know how they think. Not a joke. What really hurts is when we talk about immigration the way we do.
Yeah, so he says, I've known more world leaders than all y'all.
Well, he's probably right about that.
Yeah, but I don't think it had anything to do with the question.
What was the question?
And it was, so without the bleeped word or without the word we took out, it doesn't quite sound as angry as it really was. And kind of irrational anger is one of the signs of dementia. So, I mean.
Well, what did we hear right there, though, that was a problem?
Well, we took when he said, I've known more world leaders than, let me look up the exact.
Where was his blankety blank? I missed it.
Well,
we did a great
because
job.
We took it out. Yeah,
great
good
job
edits.
editing it
out.
we
edited it out, so
Yeah.
that's why you can't even hear where he said it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, yeah. Yeah, so.
Anyway.
So anyway, we continue to look at the president
and he was taking a shot at Trump, wasn't he? About
he was.
January 6th.
Yeah, he was. He was saying he said it was a genuine threat to democracy, but he hopes we moved on from it.
Yeah, he
That's
hopes
what
we
he
moved
said.
on from it, but we're going to keep talking about it.
Okay,
Yeah.
Talking to reporters, he says he knows more world leaders than the reporters do in their whole bleeping lives. Or bleep lives. So anyway, so that's a clear sign, and we've been seeing clear signs that Joe Biden is some diminished mental capacity. But, up and until the debate, Democrats were telling everybody that it's fine. He's as sharp as ever. In fact, he's sharper than ever. One of those Democrats was Chuck Schumer, the leader of the Democrats in the Senate, and he got this is Christian Welker, I believe, and he got on Meet the Press. Meet the Press.
Oh, Meet the Press. Okay. So this is Chuck Schumer, Senate Majority Leader, Democrat, on Meet the Press yesterday.
Yes.
Okay.
And so Christian Welker is going to start this, and she kind of puts him in a box. Let's listen to cut 9.
Obviously, there has been a lot of focus on President Biden's role in this. You were obviously in close contact with President Biden well before the public tuned into that debate that ultimately led to him stepping down. I want to play you a little bit of something you said last year. Take a look.
I talk to President Biden, regularly, sometimes several times in a week, or usually several times in a week. His mental acuity is great. It's fine. It's as good as it's been over the years. All this right-wing propaganda that his mental acuity has declined is wrong.
Leader Schumer, what do you say to Americans who feel as though you and other top Democrats misled them about President Biden's mental acuity?
Look, we didn't, and let's look at President Biden. He's had an amazing record. The legislation we passed, one of the most significant groups of legislation since since Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, putting in 235 judges, a record, and he's a patriot. He's a great guy. And when he stepped down, he did it on his own because he thought it was better not only for the Democratic Party, for America. We should all salute him. We should all salute him.
Listen, Republicans are capable of lying too. Humans are capable of lying. That's why the Bible, that's why the Lord God himself put it as one of the top 10.
Yeah.
Huh? Thou shalt not lie.
Yep.
So evidently God knew we're all capable of it. So I'm not saying this in a self-righteous way or that Republicans don't or can't. But why does a man like Schumer right there just straight up look her in the eye and lie through his teeth? And then here's a boldness of something like that. She knows he's lying.
Yes.
He knows he's lying. And the lie continues. Why doesn't Chuck Schumer just man up, as they say? Can you say man up today, or is it whatever gender
I'm not a biologist.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. Whatever you feel your gender is up.
Yeah.
And just say, yep, we did. We misled people because we wanted him to win and not lose, because it was worse to get the Republicans and Trump in there. So we decided to go with he's doing great. So I'm sorry it had to come to that, but it was better than the alternative. Why would you say something like that?
I think first of all, what's most insulting about Chuck Schumer, so much so that Kristen Welker, who heads up the storied Meet the Press
that's
show
NBC
on
show, right?
NBC. Okay, is that Schumer is insulting our intelligence?
Yes.
It would have been, I think, better for him to say,
"Yeah,
well, you know what, Kristen, I talked to the president several times a week, but I'm not a doctor, and sometimes it seemed like he wasn't as sharp, but sometimes I'm not as sharp.
Right.
And so I had no inside medical knowledge. I operated under the assumption that the president was fine. Otherwise, the doctors would have told us differently. He could have at least, if you're going to lie, he could have at least said that. But to not first, he doesn't answer her question
at all.
But to
no, he did. He said we didn't mislead. That's the first thing he said.
Yeah.
We didn't mislead. Which is a lie itself.
That is true.
He said we did mislead, and then look at his record. That's all he said. Yeah. But really, the thing is not about Biden. It's about you, Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, telling us all as well, all along. No, he's sharp as a tack.
Listen, President Biden, when he stepped down as the Democratic nominee, he should have stepped down as president too.
Yes, he should have.
He's going to wind up having been in office for 6 months, lead the head of our country.
Right.
When he had a diminished mental capacity, and everybody knows.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe someone should check Schumer for mental acuity.
Well,
he's going to believe that.
I don't know. Well, I do know that they lied because they had to cover for Biden, because they had to cover for him because he was on their team, the Democrats, and they were stuck between if we say he's slipping, then people are going to say, well, why are you letting him remain in the White House?
Right.
And it would create division between Biden, who's the sitting president, and the top Democrat leader. So he decided, Schumer being the top Democrat leader, Nancy Pelosi, let's just go before she retired as Speaker of the House. That we're just going to have to go with he's as sharp as a tack. I talk to him all the time. I think so. They went with it, and it backfired in a big way after the debate performance.
I would just toss this in too. There were I'm guessing, but I think we can all can safely assume there were political calculations that went into this too, because Joe Biden, seemed clear after he stepped down that he was not happy with the people who pressured him to leave. I mean, he has said or at least
we've heard the other day he said if I'd have run, I'd have won.
I'd have beaten Donald Trump.
Kind of like I regret being.
So people like
out.
Pelosi and Schumer probably made this calculation. We don't want to push Biden too far and demand that he step down because he knows where a few bodies are buried too.
This is prior to the debate.
No, I'm saying after the debate. In other words,
That's when they did push him out, though.
No, but I'm saying why not tell him he's got to step down as president too?
Oh.
That they might have said, no, if we do that, he knows where a few bodies are buried.
Oh, I got you.
And this could come back on us politically.
I got to say that they wouldn't have been able to get away with it near as long as they did without the cooperation of the press.
Absolutely.
Kristen Welker among them.
Yes.
Yeah, listen, it just came down to raw politics. The Democrats and the liberal media did not want to admit to what everybody knew about Biden because they didn't want to diminish his power, and they thought he was going to run again, and they didn't want to say, "Hey, we're supporting a guy who's got half his brain working now." They didn't want to say that, so they went with, "Yeah, he's as great as ever."
How about this for a political miscalculation? Knowing now what we know, Kamala Harris steps in, President Trump beats her, even in the popular vote. What if Democrats, I think this is a miscalculation. What the Democrats should have said is no debates. The President of the United States is not going to debate a convicted felon.
Oh, you mean Biden v. Trump?
Yes. I think they made a miscalculation putting him
I agree.
in for a debate. They could have at least rationalized.
Why did they do that?
Yeah, I think they figured we've got to have at least one debate. We can inject him with whatever, and he can get through one debate. But they should have said, no, absolutely no debates with this guy.
Right, they'd have had a better shot.
They would have had a better shot.
And then kept him in the basement.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
I don't think they would have had any shot of him winning, but anyway.
Yeah.
All right, we continue to learn a little bit more about these terror attacks, specifically the one in Las Vegas. A guy named Matthew Livelsberger, as you recall, drove a Tesla truck up to the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas and blew it up, killing himself. We found out that he's a 37-year-old Green Beret. He suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, which I think is the key here because he was not a Trump opponent. He was a Trump fan.
Right.
And he said, this is not a terrorist attack. It is a wake-up call. Americans only pay attention to spectacles and violence. And then he said in his writings, why did I personally do it now? I needed to cleanse my mind of the brothers I've lost and relieve myself of the burden of the lives I took.
Yeah, this is, listen, we are on this show, on this radio network, we frequently, publicly express our thanks to members of the military who oftentimes put their lives in danger to defend the United States and its interests. But it is also true that it comes at a cost for these members of the military, some of whom, maybe many of whom, come back with long-term battles that they have to fight. I'm not sure our country is doing all it can to help those members of the military get through things like post-traumatic stress disorder. We probably need to spend, if we're going to spend some money, we need to spend a little more money helping them get acclimated back to life and deal with the things they've seen, the things that they had to do. Okay? If you're a sniper and you have to put, I've never been in the military, but if you have to put a round through another human being, I don't know how you just brushed that aside.
And
So I just want to mention that at the beginning here that Matthew Livelsberger, is that how you pronounce it? Livelsberger, he was wrestling with some demons.
He was, and it gets even worse than what you described, because the terrible, awful, demon-possessed people who were perpetrating this war would load up children with explosives and send them to the soldiers. And what are you supposed to do?
Right.
So, and you remember last, it's probably Thursday, I think it was, or Thursday, we talked with Randy Sutton, who's the president of the Wounded Blue, and you say that we need money. This is an organization that he started that deals specifically.
This is for police?
Well, it's for police, but with the same, I mean, they could start one, or he could do military as well. But there are organizations like Randy's that deal with PTSD and mental breakdowns, as well as physical stuff. So,
well, God did not originally create mankind to be in war. Okay, that's a result of the fall.
Right.
So it's not I understand. I'm not trying to get all philosophical here. It is natural for people to fight, but it's because of the fall. That's not God's intention for us. And when you have to take a life, that comes at a great cost for a lot of people.
God built a lot of amazing protection into the human brain for stuff like this, and people sometimes they put it away and forget it. They can section it off and they don't remember it, but at times it's so much that they can't keep it in the box.
Yes.
And that's what happens with PTSD.
All right. Next story.
All right. Well, we have some very happy
So excuse me, but so the bottom line is the story out of Las Vegas had nothing to do with terrorism.
Correct.
Even though we originally thought it was connected to New Orleans, and they were maybe simultaneous for a reason, two people acting together, that was not the case. And the fellow who committed suicide in Las Vegas had nothing to do with the terrorist attack in New Orleans.
No, but it was a reasonable assumption because you have a Tesla truck with Elon Musk in front of the Trump Hotel. If somebody was anti-Trump and Musk, that's where you would do it. So, yeah.
What was his? I understand the gentleman was under mental duress and, as Ed said, battling demons. Obviously, I mean, he shot himself, committed suicide. That's very sad and tragic. And somebody who does that has to be under demonic oppression. But what was his political statement about wake up? Who wake up for what?
Well, I believe he's not a fan of the current leadership of the country, of the Democrats and what they've done.
But they were out.
I can't explain why he couldn't be patient for another month, except on top of the fact that he needed to wake people up. He was dealing with the demons, like he said, of the brothers he lost and the lives he took.
But it was kind of odd of course, the whole thing is messed up, right? But it's kind of odd for somebody to commit suicide and make a current events political statement. That's
well,
what
he said in one of the letters, he wrote several letters, and authorities now have those in hand. But in one of the letters, he said that the U.S. was terminally, I'm quoting now, terminally ill and headed toward collapse. So in some of his other letters, he's mentioned things about social problems, and it appears, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but it appears he thinks the social problems are too big to fix unless Americans are shocked into taking
So he
the
wanted to use his
action.
suicide to try to bring attention to his that statement.
That appears to be what he was
Americans only pay attention to spectacles and violence. What better way to get my point across than a stunt, he called it, with fireworks and explosives.
Well, but then he shot himself before the car burned up, right?
Yeah.
And the car didn't even burn up.
Oh, no, it did.
It did, but it didn't explode with apparently the force that he thought it would.
But
because
Tesla,
of the construction of it, it went upwards rather than outwards.
It did, the construction of it. Now, it might be since he was since he wasn't opposed to Trump and Musk, that he understood that it was real. I mean, it's known to be bulletproof, literally bulletproof, this car is. So he might have reasoned that it wasn't going to do a whole lot of damage, and I don't think shooting himself made more than 5 seconds of difference. He would have died either way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, well, I won't get into the gory details. Go ahead. Next story.
All right. Joe Biden is having some fun. He invited 18 of his friends to the White House over the weekend and handed out some medals of freedom. It's kind of a thing that presidents do at the end of their term.
Should I give a blood pressure warning at this point? What Steve's about to talk about? For
Yes,
those who haven't heard,
you might want to take some deep breaths here.
So Joe Biden, on his last few days, he gives, and all presidents do this, they give presidential medals of honor away to
people who have done good work for the collective good.
All right.
And for
so who did
country.
Biden choose?
Well, he chose 18 people, among them Hillary Clinton, who we know is a hero of this country, and, I say sarcastically, and George Soros, who has almost single-handedly decimated the justice system in our country.
Listen, I can understand the Hillary Clinton one,
right?
From a Democratic president who
she served as Secretary of State.
Yeah, when he was vice
First Lady.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that.
I can understand that, and you're going to have, politics enter into your selection. So if you're a Democratic president, you're not going to generally probably not going to pick a Republican for that. But George Soros,
I know
that just shows you how radical Joe Biden is, or whoever is in his administration that picked these people out. I don't even know if Joe Biden picked these folks out.
And not all of them were controversial. Michael J. Fox got something. Magic Johnson was awarded something. Denzel Washington. So probably some of Biden's favorite people.
Yeah, but Soros.
Well,
that's like giving a Medal of Honor to Dracula.
I know.
I mean, it's just villain. He's a villain.
Yeah.
There's nothing redeeming about Dracula.
Yeah.
Blah 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 blah.
All right, thank you, Steve.
My pleasure.
5, 6. Ha.
It'll be here all week, ladies and gentlemen.
Unfortunately, for our listeners.
All right. Thank you for listening to Today's Issues. That's the name of this show. We appreciate it very much. Keep listening to American Family Radio throughout the day. Take care. See you tomorrow.
So right now may be the perfect